So from the Simonstown, this area, I'll speak from what we know here. And this place is very historically layered. It goes far, far back. And normally when we engage with audiences and groups that come to the museum, we tend to start the story with our geological time, because this has a huge impact on why people end up settling here, moving around here, and so on and so forth. So I always find it very interesting to imagine that, about 1.5 to 5 million years ago, from Cape Point to Fishhook, was totally covered with water. It was like an island, separated from the rest of South Africa because the sea level's higher.
Sure.
So as the sea levels dropped, we go through our last glacial ice age and sea levels drop, then you are able to basically walk from Simonstown to Anklip because you can walk across the bay. So
it was more being aware of the effect of the forced removals. So the trauma, and occasionally people would share with me their anger. And I was very aware of how disruptive it had been to people and the effect on the community of Ocean View, that everybody was forcibly removed. And what Tazneem was saying about the lineage, the heritage, of that being confused or kind of struggling to find the identity with this coloured apartheid label, whereas it was much more complex and
In you doing the benches, the 8 benches around Simonstown, what was people's reaction towards that?
it's 10 benches, and people were very excited
10
about it.
benches,
People, like I said, just the acknowledgement that, that acknowledging the area that they came from, it does something to people. I don't know what it does, but it does something to be acknowledged, to be recognized, that you did exist here, that you were part of this community. I think that's just one step. And yes, it is a very soft approach, but I mean, that's all that we can do as a museum. If we were in the position, I would love to give people's land back, and people can come back here. And I think that's where the struggle is with museum projects, is like not only just being this memorial where people come, they tell their stories, and they go away, and the realities are exactly the same. There's no kind of transformation. There's no kind of maybe of the person, but we as a museum, it's a very difficult place to work because you want to do so much more.
Good morning, Goeie Mense. How are you today?
Good, and you?
I'm fine.
Good.
How I think this area is nice.
It's not too bad.
Yeah. No, how can you say it's
the
not
view
too
is also
bad?
not too bad today. Every time you guys come, it's showing off like it's
Yeah.
like a spectacular days.
And it feels like nice and quiet and cozy. Maybe that's, if you can just start like introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and your kind of work that you're doing, and also your connection to the whole area around the valley, and what brought you over to the side of our country.
Sure. So I'm Tazneem Wentzel. I'm the education officer at the Simonstown Museum, and I'm also currently the acting manager. So my connection. So my connection to this museum, and more generally to Simonstown, is that this was actually the first museum that I ever visited as a child.
Wow.
So it's quite funny that it's like quite bizarre to me that I'm now working here. So museums do have they do leave strong impressions on people. And my connection to the valley and to this place is that I work here. So I have to kind of know what's going on in Simonstown. But so I'm also from up the line. So I'm not originally from And it's very important disclaimer to make.
Yeah. Why do you think it's important to make the disclaimer?
Because I'm not born and bred here.
Okay.
I have a connection here, but I'm not born and bred here. I'm from, my lineage is connected to other places of forced removals, but it's a similar story.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I've gotten familiar with the community and the people, and yeah, that's my connection to Simon.
Thank you, Tazneem.
I'm Mary Ann Potts. I'm a Komaki resident, and I ended up in Komaki 20 years ago. I've lived there for 20 years.
Yeah.
But I grew up in Port Elizabeth in a little seaside village called Skoolmarkeskop.
Never heard of it.
A rocky, a lovely rocky seaside place, very small. When I came to Cape Town, I came to Cape Town when I came to study here, and when eventually I thought I should buy somewhere to live, I discovered Komaki, and I just loved the village and the milkwood trees. And I didn't want to buy, the last thing I thought of doing was buying a plot of land, but I saw this plot and full of milkwood trees, and I just loved it. And eventually ended up building there. And so I've been there for the last 20 years. So it's very new to me. I didn't know this part of Cape Town at all until I ended up here. And I'm retired now. And during COVID, during lockdown, I had retired then, and got more involved in the community, Komaki community, which I was really grateful for, because then I got involved in the social fabric aspect of the Residents Association. It's a long story, sorry. Taking off the
we're in the line, you know. It's also got connections when you're making reference to, I could imagine, like, the Port Elizabeth aspects of your story and the committee. I think I could, in my mind, I could see like that area that you're referring to, close to committee, maybe the seaside is what also kind of brought you into the space.
Absolutely, the seaside. There just happened to be milkwood trees, which I loved, but it was the seaside. Absolutely.
Just to say also, between me and Matthew will be having a conversation with you now. So now and then Matthew will jump in and you know, engage more with you. But I think for me, the first thing that I want us to kind of get into, maybe Tazneem can break it down for us a bit in terms of the history of the valley, the Khoi, you know, origin, the slavery connection into the area, and how does the area find itself where it is today, and those connections, how did they come about? So
from the Simonstown, this area, I'll speak from what we know here. This place is very historically layered. It goes far, far back. And normally when we engage with audiences and groups that come to the museum, we tend to start the story with our geological time, because this has a huge impact on why people end up settling here, moving around here, and so on and so forth. So I always find it very interesting to imagine that, you know, about 1.5 to 5 million years ago, from Cape Point to Fishhook, was totally covered with water. It was like an island, separated from the rest of South Africa, because the sea levels were higher.
Sure.
So as the sea levels dropped, we go through our last glacial ice age, and sea levels drop. Then you are able to basically walk from Simonstown to Anklip, because you can walk across the bay. So these things are important, because
Anklip is in Houtby Anklip.
On
the other side,
Strand, that side.
Kind of Royals or like around
correct,
here.
yeah. So you could walk across here. So animals could walk across here. People could walk across here. So it's interesting to imagine also, like, the kinds of animals that were roaming around in the Cape Flats and these kind of things. So in our displays, and we've collected certain items, artifacts people have brought here, and when people have developed, these fancy flats and whatever, they uncover skeletons, they uncover stone tools. And the stone tools we've got that date back to the early Stone Age. There was this lovely, it's like a border stone that was found in the Glencairn tidal pool. And these items are very old. And it speaks to the Khoi and indigenous people that were moving around here. And that narrative in this, from Fischhoek to Cape Point, is not necessarily well excavated, to put it like that. There's a lot more to be done on that history in Simonstown, but definitely this area has a strong Khoi influence, and there's a map inside that we have. It shows all the caves and overhangs where traces of human remains or human occupation were found, and it goes all around the coastline. Now you can imagine if you are a Khoi person living around the coastline, this is beachfront property. You've got the mountain, you've got the sea, you've got caves all along. Prime land. So why would you not move from place to place wherever you wanted to, according to which way the wind blows? So if it's southeast, you go to the other side. If it's northwest, you come this side. I mean, you can choose. So there's lots of these clues, these traces that are scattered along this coastline. There's lots of middens also which tell us a story of human occupation. And at this point, we are, at the Simonstown Museum is trying to, in the process of reburying this Khoi child's remains that were found near the golf course. So again, that also speaks to the long legacy. Now that particular area where the remains were found is also the site where the prisoner of war camp was during the Anglo-Boer War. So, and now the golf course is on top of it. And that was also like a fishing family's beach where they used to catch whales from. And so that's
deep. It's quite deep.
So that's on the Khoi side. In terms of the slaves that were brought here in the 17th century, Jolene's work on this is fantastic because she documents individual stories, and the slaves were instrumental in building this building, for example. So the influence of slavery in Simonstown is all over. It's written in the buildings, it's written in the stones, but it's not necessarily commemorated. It's not necessarily a narrative that people are very comfortable having out there also. And it's also not very well known until Jolene's work that she's done, which is quite extensive on where slaves were living, in the slaving families and so
and my fascination with it, for me, also it's about this connection of different people from different parts of the world coming into this area, obviously being a seaport area, and how did it shape the culture and the cross-pollination of people.
So that map over there, it says where our people originated from. It shows like the very global connections in this tiny little place. And Simonstown was historically very important to the establishment of the VOC in South Africa. Without
what is VOC?
The VOC is the Dutch East India Company, which is the first multinational corporation in the 16th century. So without the establishment of this winter anchorage, this particular building, they would not have been able to expand in the rest of South Africa. They needed a place to park off their ships during winter because they were losing a lot of cargo. So this is historically, and I mean, you see this again now when the Lady Art pulls into the harbour, the significance of this particular maritime.
I mean, people are still writing articles about this. Exactly. But Tazneem, I think there's a few things that I want to ask, or at least want to comment on, is that I think with the Khoi, it seems like, and I think you can tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like there seems to be this emphasis that they're almost a prehistory and there's no connection to people who are currently here in the valley. But a lot of those people are descendants of those people. And I wonder, like, what does working in that way look like, making people more aware that you are also a descendant of these people. So when you find the Khoi child, it's not an isolated incident of people who are no longer here.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know, because I hear you, because I feel like sometimes it is missing. People don't know that they're connected to that child.
Correct.
You know?
And
Yeah.
I'm assuming that people understand that connection, that it's not like people are a species of plants that go extinct.
Yeah.
People don't go
Yeah.
extinct, you know.
Yeah.
They evolve and adapt with other people. They intermarry. So the genetic story is it's always passed down. And what's interesting is a couple of years ago, you remember that that genome project. So a lot of the people that came to be tested, they had Khoi connections, and people were very surprised because as was altijd, my grandfather was German, my grandmother was Dutch, was a white woman. So people began to open up to this narrative that actually we are connected. To this place.
Yeah.
And there's a nice story about Auntie Joni Swain, who was the cleaner of this museum, and she was always made fun of because she was very dark of complexion. And then when she ended up working here, she did her own families, then found out that she's connected to the crewman, that she's got this indigenous connection, and that was something that was a source of pride. I think now people are a lot less ashamed to assume that connection. Whereas previously, given the apartheid context and anything black must now, you don't want to be associated with that. You want to be further up on the racial ladder.
Yeah, but also that history also was part of colonialism, is to erase that history.
Yeah,
right? So
correct.
you sever that connection. Yeah. And the other thing I want to say that we found interesting was we were reading Jolene Young's book or thesis, and it was interesting that it's actually connected with District 6 with Alexander Tennant. Because I mean, he seemed to have had like a warehouse here and was trading slaves from Simonstown, but he's also a famous slave trader in District 6. Yeah. Like the grounds that it was his Zonnebloem became District 6.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite cool. Like, not cool because of slavery, but it's
Slavery's
an
cool,
interesting
no.
connection.
Yeah, but once you get that, because also what gets you excited is once you find those connections.
Yeah.
I say, oh, that happened there. Okay, that's why. Then.
Oh, and I must just say, we don't say slave, we say the enslaved people.
That's
I think it's important. Yeah, sorry.
Maybe, Mary, whilst you were working at a hospital in Slankop or Ocean View, did you encounter some of these, when you were engaging with the community, did you encounter some of these experiences people sharing with you in terms of their lineages and where they're from and what does it mean for them and the connection to the valley?
It was more being aware of the effect of the forced removals. So the trauma, and occasionally people would share with me their anger. And I was very aware of how disruptive it had been to people and the effect on the community of Ocean View, that everybody was forcibly removed. And what Tazneem was saying about the lineage, the heritage, of that being confused or kind of struggling to find the identity with this coloured apartheid label, whereas it was much more complex and I was very, very struck by how the social problems in the community were really quite overwhelming and just so directly affected by the history of how it was formed.
Sure.
And just being in this valley with very segregated communities that are still very segregated. And I worked there in the early 2000s.
Sure.
So,
And Mary Ann, is that where you found like your interest, not interest, but starting to work with people with the forced removals in Komiki? Did it come from your experience being a doctor, or did you kind of know already about it before?
Maybe from PE, where you were originally from.
Yeah. I mean, from PE, I remember my memory is the Chinese grocery that we used to go to. Where I lived in this little village, there were 2 little cafes run by local residents, but my parents shopped at Wing King Grocery, which was a little distance from where we lived, and the Wing Kings had to move house in forced removals. And there were petitions. My parents were involved in petition to try and stop that. But I remember they kept their shop for a while, but they had to move house. And eventually, I think their shop closed, and I don't actually know what happened.
To the family.
So that's my strongest memory of the forced removals, because I knew that family, and I was aware that it was happening in other parts. Can't remember what your question was.
It's right. And I think part of the work of the museum, which I think probably by now both of you understand, that it's about, preservation, memory keeping. Is about the whole question around erasure, that we don't want it to take form. And we could see that there are certain active moments in our history where people intentionally they want to erase some of the histories. One of the perfect areas that Matthew was referring to was the PS Cave, which is also does have a Khoi connection. Maybe we can talk a bit about that, and just as a matter of, not going deep into it, just an understanding and awareness around it. Why these caves? What is the value add of the caves? Why are they so central into our history as a country?
So that particular cave, Pierce Cave, is named after the family that discovered the remains in that cave, and I use discover very deliberately because that was the language of the time. It was used to describe when people discover these. Yeah. So this father and son duo in there, they were like amateur archaeologists. So they would go from the backyard in, because their backyard I think was very close to the cave. So they would go in every weekend and go in.
Oh, they were part of the valley.
Yeah, they lived here.
Okay.
They were from here. So they went to the cave. From what I understand, I have to be corrected. And they would go and excavate this cave, and they would do it quite like abrasively, because they were amateur archaeologists' hobby. Yeah. So they'd use dynamite and all these types of things to to excavate.
But to be fair to them, I think it was kind of, archaeology was rudimentary regardless.
Yeah. And what they found was that there were quite a number of human remains in that cave. Yeah, and I think it was specifically a burial site because of the number of. That's what I understand when I read from what they say, that was a particular burial place in the caves. So they found the Fishhook Man, which is a very early human remains, and they've got pictures. We also have it here in our archives in the newspaper. That is standing with the skeleton, posing with a skeleton.
Yeah.
But to be fair, in that era, black and brown bodies, in terms of the historical context, you weren't the subject, you were an object, which is what was happening at Iziko, not Iziko now, but what the South African Museum back then is that that was the norm, is that's how bodies were treated. So there were a number of beautiful, that Fishhook Museum has a lot of the artifacts, the stone tools, very beautiful stuff. So maybe that's the burial site of the Khoi that were living in this particular area. Sure. But I don't know. Research on Khoi remains is quite, what's the word now? Hey, pregnancy brains. The word is just gone.
Yeah. Is it limited, or is it not?
It's very contentious.
It is very contentious.
Yeah. So, that story needs to be told in this area. It's I mean, if we can commemorate Charles Darwin, I think we can commemorate the Khoi. In
and the Fishhook Man and the
Fish
women.
Hook.
I think
And-
most of them were women, and I think and a
And
child and the Fishhook Man.
And there was a medicine woman also that was found with
Yeah.
like all the medicinal herbs. And then just going back to the remains that we have, the Khoi child was buried in a very particular way as well, with herbs and with. So it was an intentional.
That's
These were
exactly-
intentional burials. It wasn't just like
Haphazardly.
100%.
someone just died and just left it there. These were.
That's why, I mean, there's that, I don't know, there's the mummy in Albany, at Albany Museum, where they found a Khoi person's remains, and it's also, the herbs actually what helped to preserve
the.
because
Yeah.
of
So
curveball,
this-
I think, or something like
So
that.
the science was already there
Yeah,
to be able to keeping
exactly.
you a bit longer. But I think what we were. when
Also,
we-
just on the science. In terms of the science and medicine, there are like these accounts of sailors that arrive here and are treated by the Khoi, the traditional healers, and
when they see,
because there's nothing that the sailors, they didn't have
they didn't bring any
Nope.
some of
So-
their supplements along.
and they are commended on their skill with regards, because I mean, to think of like how many, if you look at this area, we've got, I mean, how many biodiverse, there's like a gazillion, I mean, back then there must have been even more biodiversity. To know that particular plant does this and that does this, that takes a lot of
just-
scientific testing and experimentation
Exactly.
too. So,
It's like that meme, who was the first person to find out that it was poison or not poison.
Yeah.
But I think it's like, it also makes you think about, because my mom is from Granada, it's like the Overberg here, like Jesukwa, and there's a lot of like, if you think about, I always think of the frontier South Africa back then would have been very like kind of Wild West, I think.
yeah.
But a lot of the hunting routes and hunting understanding came from the Khoi and the San who were doing the hunting. So when the Europeans came, they didn't have to like learn that knowledge; they learned it from them. And I think it's the same what you're saying in terms of the medicine and stuff like that. But they use existing knowledge, obviously, which makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it works better in that area.
Yeah.
You know, and they know it better. And I think what I was trying to say earlier was that this idea of why we talk about PSK, I think it comes from this idea of people easily forget stuff if that stuff is not, no one talks about it.
Exactly.
And Matthew and Dean always say, if you were to ask my sibling or my 18, 20-year-old kid about Jan van Riebeeck, they will jump and say, we know who's Jan van Riebeeck and da. I think with what we are doing, we're also trying to take that into the
Like
mainstream.
Jan van Riebeeck's.
Yeah.
No. I think it's like making more
Yeah.
Katoas, like
Yeah.
so that Katoa becomes just as easy in terms of modern parlance or historical parlance that you know exactly what that is, all of that. And I think that's what Ayanda is talking to. It's like, I think part of our job as working in history in 2025 is looking at not the shadow side, but looking at other forms of of historical figures, people who are there who've kind of been overlooked. And I think a lot of people have been doing the work. I think another thing, what Ayanda is tapping into is that it's not there for lack of work though, because people have been working on these things for decades, especially like post 94, even before already, people were doing the work. Its problem is like, how do you take that and move it into the mainstream?
Yeah.
And I think that's also one of the questions that we're struggling with. Is like, is that a methodological thing? Is it a pedagogical thing? Like that's for both for you, Mary, and it doesn't like, how do you make something that's kind of unknown known in that way? I don't know if you want to answer.
Just ask easy questions.
Yeah. I think that's the whole idea of how do we take it to the center so that people could know about it. I think it does have a significance in terms of our country and where we are moving as a world. And I think the stronger points that are coming here are also scientific points that people can't dispute, because sometimes once you talk about intangible heritage, people tend to be skeptic and say, what are you talking about? The spirits, the energies, and it's like, what are you talking about? But once we make it more explicit, then it makes sense to them, because it's a matter of, it's scientific, it's a fact. And for me, I think that's what we are trying to also articulate in having these conversations with different people. I think the second part to our conversation was around this notion of apartheid and the void it has created within communities. And what would you say are some of those visible voids that are part of the valley? And besides that, the potential of the valley itself. How do we see us leveraging on the potential? Because there is obviously a potential for the fact that people will come across the world and come and be here and engage in many activities. What are those, aspects of the potential within the valley area itself?
Do you want to go first?
Well, I can talk about Komiki and our obvious history of forced removals in Komiki. And unfortunately, our white communities generally have quite a lot of amnesia about it, and because it's not very present to us. And the fact that we live next to Ocean View, where every family was very strongly affected by being forcibly removed. It's you talk about a void. It's an enormous absence of our very recent history. I mean, it's the late 60s, early 70s. It's within the living memory of people who lived there, lived in Komiki in their lifetimes. So I think having physical memorials helps. It opens the conversation, and it's really been helpful to engage with people, and I'm so grateful for discovering what you've done in Simonstown Museum and the Phoenix Committee, and discovering that has been, for me, really important, because I just discovered about the one family, the Daniels family, who had been documented in one of the books about Komiki. And so there was somewhere to start. But it's very sad how we forget if we don't want to remember. Just for me, meeting families, meeting people who had lived in Komiki, who'd grown up in Komiki, who'd lived there until young adulthood, was a major opening of the history, the stories, because my personal memories are of when I was very young, and I can hardly remember, except it had an impact, but that was long ago, and now I'm living in a different place. I think I'm very excited about us starting to have gatherings and community gatherings, storytelling, and since I've become more aware of the stories in Ocean View and Komiki, and starting to ask people where their families lived, where they were moved from, just becoming aware of the extent of it in the valley. And everybody I've spoken to has got a story, and different areas, different family parts of the family came from different places, and it's it's kind of just it's so important. It's so for healing. We need to
And I think, Marian,
listen and
it's
hear.
also kind of healing for everyone. And I think it's almost like you're saying the white community has an amnesia to it, but I think I can understand sometimes why they would be ambivalent towards it. Is because sometimes it becomes about bashing and about kind of guilt tripping. And I think it's a fine balance when we're telling these stories that it's not so much about that, that it's more about that kind of acknowledging and fostering connection. And I think that is kind of our challenge too, right, for telling these stories. But I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah. I've come across quite a bit of defensiveness, and I was astonished once with someone saying that his elderly brother, who was very old, living in Komaki for a while, he didn't think he would want to tell him about what I was discovering about people forcibly removed, because he wouldn't like to think that his house had been, people were forcibly removed. And I said, there's only one existing house, others were bulldozed. But it was like the ignorance, not knowing the history, causes more anxiety and fear and defensiveness. Whereas I could assure him and say, that house was definitely not taken from people who were forcibly removed. As the more the stories open up, the more we can, I don't know.
Maybe if we think of it like in terms of the metaphor of a wound. I mean, you're a medical doctor, but a wound, if you keep it closed, what happens? And it just festers, and it doesn't address the problem of the wound. It needs to be, I don't know, what they must do.
Absolutely, open, let the pus out. And sorry, if I can just say, for young white people to grow up not knowing about this is to me, it's just unfair, It's to I mean, I think being exposed to our history in a way where there are people who can tell us their stories that we can relate to, rather than theoretical. This happened, there are people who are still alive, who can tell us what happened and how it was to grow up, how it was when the bulldozers came. That's totally different, and I'm very, very grateful, in my older years to engage, and to have the aunties coming to talk to us and tell their stories and be moved by their experiences.
And for me, that's the part that I think, makes my heart feel a bit warmish. It's that sense of resilience from the aunties that we spoke to, sometime in the last 2 years or so. And for me, that's what I always want to latch on to. It's that sense of resilience. What can we do to kind of instill that idea of people, at least people survived, people are managing to move on with their lives. And do you think in the valley there is that potential for people to really, show that sense of resilience, show their sense of presence and say, we're still here, no matter what?
Well, if you look at Ocean View, there's a lot of groups and people doing amazing things. And, statistically, I work with a lot of children from Claymore Primary and Marima, and statistically, the children the classes are too full, the resources are lacking. Statistically, they shouldn't amount to much. But you see these children just flourishing in different components. Like the one that just pops into my mind is the Ocean View Cadets, and what they've done with a lot of children learning to do marching and working together. And these things are important because it teaches kids to reconnect with one another. Because as you know, like in our communities, there's a lot of trauma that's been inherited over generations. It can be, you can read it from the days of slavery, what has happened to people, and it's been passed on, and it manifests itself in alcoholism, drug abuse, gangsterism, blah, 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 etc., sorry. And that's probably what you also saw a lot of in the medical field, is you saw the effects of forced removals. And a lot of people don't make that connection between what has happened, what is happening, and people's ability to continue just to get up in the morning. Like some kids, I look at them and I'm like, I don't know if I would be able to wake up and come to school and be here. That is resilience. So you get your big political acts of resistance and resilience, but I'm far more interested in everyday people's just surviving, smiling, laughing. These are the things that like really
that makes the society. That creates that society.
And I can see it in Ocean, despite a lot of infighting and whatever. I mean, that's always community politics. But I watch it from a distance. I'm like, I'm very proud to see that people are fighting about what they want, what they feel they deserve, and that's important. That's they know what they want. There's an engagement. There's not an apathy. In towards their surroundings, like we don't care what happens. They're invested in seeing that children go to school. That there's people smoking on the corner. There's still that element of that small town, that Simonstown, where everybody knew each other's child. And there are elements of that, and people are realizing that certain things that old people used to do, we need to bring back. We need to continue to, like, your child is my child, because there's some parents are not there. They're not present. They're not. So who's going to? Do we just leave them to society, or do we also take on that role of? And that's how communities are formed or reformed. So for me, that's the acts of resilience and resistance. And obviously there were some in Simonstown. I remember there was one protest. There's only one I can think of that I know about, where I think the people from Loyola marched against the pass laws. And they were told to backtrack. Just remember that this is the naval base. This is one of the defense wings of then the Apartheid government. So you are in the belly of the beast here. So people have a different kind of relationship with authority, have a different kind of relationship with, they are very aware of the might of a state.
Which resided here.
So when the Loyola people decided they were to march against the pass laws, they were told, please just stop, because they're going to shoot you, they're going to kill you. And I remember, I said to be corrected, somebody else can, but they were then turned away. They were one of the constables, I think he was a groom, begged them to turn around and to not, because they were going to bring the forces, because this was a defense wing of the. So you can imagine
strategic position.
A very strategic position. So you can imagine having this mixed group of people living right next to the defense wing that is set on purity and separating everyone. What a threat that was in itself. So there were acts of resistance. And I remember there was also this one story of Pastor Theo Bowers, where I think he was with the PAC, and he went around dressed as a woman, like putting up protest posters. And when I tried to find him, obviously they changed back into. So there these little snippets of those kind of historical political resistance, but also and the Black Sash is, of course, I can't forget the Black Sash. I mean, they did a lot of work in terms of trying to assist people to stay in Simonstown and documenting and helping them and mobilizing people to try and fight against the separation of people. So before the implementation of the Group Aiders Act, there was a vote to whether or not the community in Simonstown wanted this place to be rezoned. So that involved like the mosques, the churches, the dockyard workers, the Navy, which was, it's a cross-section of everybody. And not one person voted in favor of the separation and forced removals of people in Simonstown. Which is very significant, because despite whatever differences people had, nobody wanted anybody to be removed from this area.
That's really something.
Yeah.
That's really something.
And it makes sense that it becomes then a strategic position, because that's if people were able to do whatever they wanted to do around the area, it will break the might of the apartheid government. I think it's the same argument that is made, just off the tangent, is made by Ronnie regarding the Marikana massacre. He was making a point to say they were there in the mountains, it's no strategic point. Why would they want to reinforce? Whereas here it makes sense that if you come in close and
the frigates and everything is parked right there. It's a national threat to security.
We were looking at those big guns with Matthew. We were looking at
counting the guns.
how much ground they will cover.
I don't know about that.
I think also what we also wanted to engage with was again the idea of, because as a museum also we've got different ways and methods that we hold on to memory and rather deal with trauma, and we use various systems and tools. But I think there is also a common thread within that, and I think for me it takes me back to the idea of the Bietjie concept. What is it all about? Its intention, and where are we thinking about it, and where should we be going with it in terms of? I know at the base of it is to bringing people together. But I think it's bigger than that.
So it's actually a funny story how the Bietjie concept ended up here, and then that's how I met Mary. And so host Klein Schmidt, he just happened to walk into this museum, and I was like, here's another white guy coming with some plan to save the people, whatever. And then at the same time, I was reading about IDAF. And that archive.
What's IDAF?
IDAF is the Christian Institute archive. It was a very important wing in the anti-apartheid movement. So they were they collected people's documents, and they also supported financially, collecting money from people overseas and supporting the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And he was in charge of all of that. So he wasn't just some random white dude that And then he came to with this concept. I was like, okay, it sounds interesting. It sounds like it's a nice concept, and the whole idea is based on the Stolpersteine. Yes, Stolperstein, that one.
I know, it's like a tongue twister.
Which is the little, so it's kind of memorial blocks that people put in front of doorways where Jewish families were exterminated in Germany from their in front of their homes where they were forcefully removed from.
Don't they say? I think they say they lived there, and then they say they were killed, and where they went, the names, and which camp they were killed in.
So they are little blocks that are usually in front of the door. So every day you walk.
Identification as a proof.
Yes, every day you walk over, you trip, you stumble. Yeah. And it's to remind you in your everyday comings and goings that there was a family, a Jewish family that lived here and that died, that were exterminated during the Holocaust. So Horst brought this concept of Bietjie, which is a plant, and it's a thorny plant, and when you walk past it, it hooks you. So you have to.
In Xhosa we call it Nomeva.
Correct.
Which is thorns, also you can't really pass it.
You can't really pass it.
If you go hunting my earlier days, if you see Nomeva, make your way around it. You can't pass it. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it hooks you, and you have to. It forces you to stop and to unhook yourself. Yeah. So it's that moment of just wait a moment, pause, that we thought would really be a powerful concept to commemorate the forced. I don't know if commemorate's the right word, but just to remember that acknowledge that the forced removals happened here. And Horst was very much more like let's go to the houses and knock on the doors, and I'm like, I don't think it's not gonna work.
Reminds me. Okay. Anyway.
So we went for a slightly softer approach, where we made these. We connected with Great Studios, and they had this mosaic project, and we created these mosaic Bietjie benches. And Peter Clark happened to have a very beautiful image of a Bietjie plant. So it was all just like, yes.
You can't make that up.
Yes. So each bench is related to an area like Radial, Paradise Road, the Kloof, and then there's 12 areas in Simonstown and 12 benches. We made to date 10.
Wow.
We have 2 that are outstanding. And then in this process, Mary Ann, I didn't even know what became Witssons. And then Mary Ann came to one of the events. And you were like, this needs to be done in Komiki. And I was like, yes, take it, run with it, go for it.
Yeah, as a model.
Do what you, if like, whatever you need, we can help you with, like, if not money, but like, like concept and whatever other kind of assistance. And that's how Mary Ann then just ran with it.
Yeah.
And I think it's beautiful because that's what we wanted. We wanted like this marking, this mapping of forced removals in this area, so that people can know that it's not just boulders and the penguins and the baboons and whatever, that there's that this town, this area was built by people that no longer live here, that were forced out of here based on the color of their skin. So that's where the Wagabiki comes in, and that's how I met Mary Ann, and I think we've just been in each other's radar ever since.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And it's like you're literally telling those people to Wagabiki, like as the tourists are coming through, like just wait a moment and reflect. And Marianne, I remember that there was a fundraiser that you started in Komiki for the benches, and that was a couple of years ago now.
That was during COVID. So, it was because I'd retired then and got involved with the food parcels in the Komiki area. And so I met people who were, wanting to do what we could to support families who were struggling. And then, so there was this group of people that I could tell about this, what I wanted to do. And we needed to raise money. Someone said, what about a raffle? I thought, oh my goodness. And then somebody else said, we must put it online. She said, my brother will do it. And slowly, this little community of people who were prepared to get involved developed.
Wow.
And then people had to contact me for the tickets. So I met these people who had a positive response to this idea, and it was wonderful. And then of course the mosaicist from Ocean View, Regan Rubain, who was part.
He did our benches,
Yeah, so Tazneem told me about him, and then we needed the pictures of Komiki, and an artist in Komiki offered to do that. And these beautiful drawings that he did. And then we raffled and we got the artist who did the drawings. He donated the drawings, the artworks, and then someone asked one of our well-known artists in Komiki if she would donate one of her paintings, and she did. And so it was kind of spreading the story through working towards the benches. And so I think that's what's been really nice about it. Which was organic, working towards something which then physically was there.
Do you? Maybe it has been both of you and Marianne. Do you find it quite challenging, that part that we're using that kind of method into memory, into healing and trauma? How do you, the community members who experience forced removals, do they take that close into their hearts? Do they find that process to be healing?
What process now?
The process of working with the benches and telling their stories as a method of healing and working with trauma and telling their stories.
Look, I can say, like at our unveiling of the benches at Jubilee Square, the fact that the area was recognized was important to him. And it attracted a lot of people to come on the day and stand next to the bench. Like, I was from the club. I was from here.
So it kind of, that power comes back. Okay, before we went out for a break, we were talking about the method of the benches as a way of healing, and how some people really feels like it's quite a soft way of dealing with trauma and healing. And do you, in you doing the benches, the 8 benches around Samosta, what was people's reaction towards that?
It's 10 benches, and people were very excited about it.
10 benches,
people, like I said, just the acknowledgement that, that acknowledging the area that they came from, it does something to people. I don't know what it does, but it does something to be acknowledged, to be recognized, that you did exist here, that you were part of this community. I think that's just one step. And yes, it is a very soft approach, but I mean, that's all that we can do as a museum. If we were in the position, I would love to give people's land back, and people can come back here. And I think that's where the struggle is with museum projects, is like not only just being this memorial where people come, they tell their stories, and they go away, and their realities are exactly the same. There's no kind of transformation. There's no kind of maybe of the person, but we as a museum, it's a very difficult place to work, because you want to do so much more than what is within your actual scope to do.
I think for me,
I think what is interesting, I'm going to give to Meti now. I think what is interesting with the kind of work that we do at the museum with Tina and around different projects that we do, and she dives onto it deeply and say it does make sense, because it kind of changes the society from a personal point of view. And by the time the person engages with the community, at least the person is of a different kind of form in essence. So I think in my mind, it kind of, there's some kind of a logic around it. Maybe personal development starts healing and make sure that you're ready for.
No, you're absolutely right. You know why also? Like when I started here, a lot of Simonites just did not want to really talk about their experience here. So again, going back to the idea of this wound that's not open to healing.
So you die inside, it just gets infected.
Yeah, and I mean, you know the effects of having this trauma. Just it affects you physically. It affects your digestive system. It affects your blood sugar, your blood pressure. It has a physical effect on people's bodies to carry trauma in their bones and in their flesh. So it was nice to see once we started. And it wasn't started by me. I mean, the Phoenix Committee have been doing this work before I even came here. So to carry on that legacy and to encourage people to continue to talk through oral histories and WhatsApp stories. So yes, you're right. It does start the process, and that's what we can do for now.
Do you think the conversation could have been more deeper if all of us as South Africans will have that conversation? I'm saying in essence, in terms of different racial groups in essence, so that we kind of find that common ground. And Ameti was referring to this thing of these spaces being not like a bashing space, but really, because we also have this fascination of saying, even if the other racial group was seen as benefiters of apartheid, but there was, in my view, there was some form of trauma, but we don't talk about that trauma. Maybe if we can find a way of also, I think it's been like. I
think it's a very difficult conversation. It's like how do we have a conversation between oppressor and oppressed? If we're looking at like Gaza and Palestine now, how in the future, how would that conversation happen? How do you negotiate? How do you navigate that conversation between?
If you look at the Rwanda genocide, that happened, and it does have a potential. It's just that I think there needs to be a way of us engaging with that. Maybe the first step it's with the benches. Maybe the second step is having that conversation.
I think for me, it's almost starting to think anymore about the oppressor versus the oppressed. And I think that's part of the problem, is that we tend to generalize who the enemy is. And we create boogeymen and boogeywomen that don't really exist in a sense. And we start to say that then we fall back on race as the mechanism of that. But I always ask people, do they know who the Director General of the Community Development Board was in the time of Bietjie Mosaic? like most of us don't know that answer. So it's almost like we need to start tuning into who the people who actually were doing the enacting of apartheid, and taking away this kind of collective guilt, because I think that's very dangerous and a very difficult thing to have a conversation on, is that I would also feel like that. If I'm automatically guilty when I walk into the room, we're not really going to have a conversation, right? But if we can actually point to who the actual perpetrators were, that changes the conversation completely. And I think it's also going back to your point, Tazneem, it's like, I think as museums, our point isn't to give people's land back. I think as hard as that is to swallow and understand, like I think I first started the museum, and I know Ayanda is very passionate about this, it's like, it's the purpose of what we're doing. Like, look, we can't fix, for example, what the ANC is doing right now in the sense of the economic status of South Africa. Like, that's impossible. And giving people their houses back is part of that conversation, not necessarily part of our conversation. I think our conversation is like, how do we bring healing? How do we bring significance? How do we make people make sure, like you say, like that they matter? I think that's one element, one cog of the car. Like, we may be the wheel of the car, but the wheel it's four wheels, and there's a body, and there's tires, and there's others, And I think that's part of it. It's like, I think that's our kind of role as a way, is to have different conversations that kick out everything. Like, we've been through this for 30 years. Like, this idea, we ruminate on who did this and who did that, and I did this and you did that. But like, it doesn't really got us anywhere. And I think that's part of where we need to start moving towards. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, you are making sense. But the thing is also, like, another question that I also quite often think to myself is like, for what is this program, like, you have to be so careful of it becoming this like narcissistic endeavor where it's about making you feel better about yourself. So at the same time, it's like, I don't know, it's just a complex. This kind of healing and things like that also needs to be accompanied with some kind of action. It needs to have some kind of. So my thinking is always to think, how does this translate into something that has a real tangible value to somebody that, It's a difficult question. I don't know if I can.
And I think it's a practice and a methodology question in terms of, does it bring about what you want it to bring? Maybe a person, through the program speaks about their own experiences. By the time they get into the, let's say, restitution, getting their house, they're a better person. Whereas probably if we did not have these, building blocks towards that, maybe the person will still get their house and still be traumatized. So I think it is a combination of many things, and I agree with Matthew to a greater level to say that also we need to kind of connect people to where they need to be in terms of our work, so that we don't leave them hanging.
Exactly.
We know that, for this now we can go so that we can deal with the issue of land and moving forward as people. I think my other part that I wanted to explore, it's with people in relation to the land itself. What do I mean by land? I mean the sea, the actual land. How are people, are they leveraging on that? Have they taken back their power to say, yes, I can? Because that's their roots. It should come naturally with them to say, I'm used to work on the sea. I'm used to make my own, foods. And do you think people are engaging in that fashion with the issue of land?
I think people are starting to wake up now that they like how important land is to them, and having access to space to live, to breathe, and to do whatever you want to do. I think it is, and just going back into the museum's role in this, like, you're right, we can't take on all of the issues, but we can certainly be a platform where people can build themselves to take those issues on themselves. So I think that it's very important that museums are critical spaces where people can develop the critical and political awareness and thinking to take on their own, because you can't determine what a person needs. They need to determine that. I'm not from the community. They need to determine.
Exactly.
In terms of there was something I wanted to say about environmentalism and land ownership in this particular area that's very key to the conversation. Like, for example, in Radial, in old radial. The land is standing available. It's open. It's the ruins of where people lived are still there. But they can't get access to it because there's some kind, it's now part of sand parks, and now it's a national park, and now there's a specific type of frog or whatever that's endangered that, means that people can't move back to the land. And yet this is the same people that lived with that frog.
Yeah.
These are the same people that lived from the land, that go back regularly, go and collect herbs for medicine. So there's a lot of difficulty around like people wanting to preserve the land for its environmental value, and then the need of social housing on the other hand, and how these conversations are connected and disconnected. And I think for us here, what I realize is that people don't understand the forced removals. They don't understand this concept of like being uprooted from your area unless you kind of guise it in the environmental narrative where you showcase what people had access to, what people lived with. They once they understand then how forced removals affected people, because they can imagine what it would be like not to be able to swim here. They can imagine not having access to the mountains. And in that way it does, can create that conversation.
Do you think it changes the way they look at things in light of the 30-year democracy space? The 30 years that we've passed. Do you think they've changed their mental models in terms of how they engage with that, in terms of exactly what you're saying, in terms of land being preserved, we're not allowed to? Do you think that has changed in terms of how they look at who's holding, who's
I think people are very angry because 30 years later and more salt has just been thrown on the wound, and the salt has been thrown on the land so that there's nothing can grow from it. So the process has been so slow. The restitution process has been so slow, and even just getting housing is so slow and complicated and political, and it becomes racial, and nobody benefits. So there's a huge frustration, and I don't know where and how, and hopefully it will manifest constructively that those that need to be held accountable are held accountable, that things need to get a move on. I mean, Professor Ben Cousins did research on how long it would take to I did a study of something of how long it would take to restitute land. It's like something like 600 years. Something ridiculous. And so that's,
it's unsustainable.
That's not sustainable. That's not, and by then, your even now, grandchildren not really interested in, so I don't know, the land question is a very complicated question, and it's,
Maybe you've been wanting to jump in, sorry.
No, I think Tazneem kind of said what I think. For me, it's like it's difficult because I think it's like there's a need for land, but it's like maybe what kind of land and the conversations around that. And I think it's because of the 30 years that we've had. I think it's like I agree with you that has added salt. I think the current government has like done people a disservice. I think this would have been a very different conversation in maybe 94, 96 when it opened up.
But it was hopeful.
Yeah, it was very hopeful. People thought there would be a difference. But now, if you reflect on, I think it was at Eland's Grove, they just got the ability to look after their own land again, because it was a complete debacle, which was, I think Ben Cousins speaks about it, which was engineered by the state, by the current government. They were the ones why Eland collapsed. So I think that's part of the conversation. I think that's really important. Is like what land is, what does land mean for people? And I think that's why I'm saying with museums' roles, I agree with you. It can become a very narcissistic thing, just thinking we can do the healing. Like I think that's a big one. But I think at the same time, it's like my biggest fear is that we promise people something we can't keep.
We can't deliver on.
Yeah. With that 600 years like above us.
Exactly.
Maybe let's bring Mary Ann into the conversation again, in terms of, in the context of committee, and how does that social cohesion aspect of the committee comes into life, and obviously with the currently we're thinking of doing the launch of the benches in committee. How will that assist us in having this conversation?
Yeah, I think whatever we can do to open up the conversation, and for a mostly white community like Komaki, it's really about time we woke up, and did the work that we need to do to find our healing of being part of the beneficiaries, for sure, of this terrible apartheid disruption. And I think where white communities, where white people, where the harm that we are sitting with is that we're not connected. We individualized. We need connection. We need to open our communities. We need to start talking. We need to start healing ourselves. And yeah, we can only benefit by engaging with being part of our country in a connected way of facing reality, facing the past, facing all that we benefited from, and whatever guilt we sit with and whatever shame we sit with, that it doesn't help to not to be in our little laggard communities, which is what, and the fear of the people in Ocean View, because there's social problems, and there's people who are poor and who and so it's unhealthy. We live in an unhealthy way. So we need to do for ourselves what we need to do to find our own liberation. And I'm just grateful that we doing a little bit. But again, you talk about this is it's only if we move, if we really engage in what the implications are of living in. I mean, we in a valley where we are physically close, but very unconnected, and the potential is there, and may we use that potential as well as possible. And I think the vision of the museums in our area is really can help us all to open up, connect, whatever, and face.
And do you? I'm not sure what you think about museum being that space of where it's kind of a neutral ground for the conversations to happen.
A museum is a neutral space?
Yeah, as there is such a conversation. Or do you think there's some...
Museums are... Everything is political. A museum is a highly political space. It's never a neutral place. Yeah. And it's dependent on who's curating the space, who's curating the events and so. So it's not necessarily that... and I don't think we also need to be neutral. We can also...
Take positions.
We take positions, but we also have a politics of politics and the principles of what you are trying to achieve as a heritage museum, as an institution. I work for government, so our principle is that we must create a connected, active, creative Western Cape,
social cohesion,
and all of that thing. So. And as like airy fairy as it may sound, I do believe that is what we 100%. Should do, and that filters into our programs and our events that we try to be as inclusive within those principles and in the politics of the space, that we are aware and empathetic to different audiences that come here. And there's some people that would say no. I mean, I've had this. Someone said, "Oh, this has become a forced removals museum," and it's not. It's not true. That's not true. Yeah, it's not true at all. The only thing that we've done is just added the stories that weren't necessarily displayed.
It enhances it.
Balancing the narrative.
I mean, there's nothing better. Like I've been enjoying looking at everything here. Like it tells the people's story in such it makes it come alive.
Yeah.
And forced removals isn't the main thing that you learn about.
Exactly.
It, you know.
And that's also the other thing is that people's stories are not just only about forced removals. There's a lot more. There's a lot more to them than. There's like fascinating stories that you start to learn, and forced removals is one of the stories. It's just the most traumatic story that happened in this particular area within memory, where the majority of the community was forced out. That's why it's such a it's a mark in when before and after. And everybody who's originally from Simonstown, even those that were left behind, talk about the community was never the same again. It's not the same as it was before. And you can read like Dams Willis, their quotes of what he says, like, this should be called Blankville by the sea, blank, white, nothing. There's nothing here. Because this is after the people were taken away.
The character, like the soul.
The soul of Simonstown was moved to Ocean View. And shame that soul is really trying to recover from.
I'm very so sorry for taking. I also get excited with small issues that I imagine in the conversation. But Marianne, you wanted to talk more about the name change process and committee and what initiatives are already happening in terms of bringing people together.
And just on this, it's all political. It's. I mean, I think I'm realizing in Komaki we need to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable. You know, with opening up the uncomfortable things that we slowly become comfortable with. Well, with used to engaging with it. So unless we start opening it up, it has no chance of being kind of a bit more less uncomfortable, if that makes sense. It's that's part of opening the wound. So artwork can be really helpful, and there's a water tower in Komaki that Daniel's father, Mr. Jacob Daniels, was very much part of building and establishing the water and the piped water in Komaki. And the artist, one of our artists, Chip Snedden, who did the pictures for the benches, he had an idea, vision with another young man, of painting a elephant on the water tower, and with the idea that an elephant never forgets. And an elephant kind of fitted very well onto the water tower. And he also wrote about the Daniels family and Mr. Daniels, who were forcibly removed. So it is there for those who want to read about it, on the water tower with the elephant. And then the name change that we are planning, something the Daniels family would really like to happen, is that the street where their house is called Jacob Avenue, after Mr. Jacob Daniels. All the other streets with surnames of old families are the surnames of the families, and this is the first name. So the family would really like the name to be changed to Jacob Daniels. So that we plan to engage with the community and which will be informing. A big part of it will be informing them that this is why we can change it.
I think the only thing I was thinking about that sometimes what makes it difficult, that people feel like quite resistant to that, is that it's because it's something about their street that they live in.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that, and I can understand their point of view in a way, because it's like your street and like you're what you call it.
Yeah.
And I get that makes them, I mean, we all
Yeah.
feel like that. And I was thinking like what they did sometimes in District 6 was there's Blinner Street, and then below Blinner Street it's Upper Ashley Street. So the original street's name was Upper Ashley Street, and the top street is what currently is on the maps. So I was wondering if that was some kind of way also to bring different people into the conversation, because I think so many times with these initiatives they're very top down.
And we
bulldoze, but we bulldoze with good intention.
Yeah.
You know, it's like our hearts are in the right place and we're knowing, and it's almost like could that be possible for the name change in terms of thinking about it in a different way and making it maybe like making a street sign there, but it not necessarily has to be on like a cadastral thing, like or it has to be changed on the map or anything. It's like, have you ever thought about it like in that way?
Yeah, I think it's certainly a possibility, and changing it to Jacob Daniels is not a major change. I mean, it is a change, but it's just including the surname to Jacob. So. I think maybe a good idea would be to put up a sign first, and then it becomes seen as Jacob Daniels Street, and then applying. I think it would be very good for it to be changed.
On the map
the street
level.
on the map, yeah, because it's just such a part of the apartheid heritage, the past, that should be changed.
I think we've come to the end of our conversation. If I've missed anything, maybe we say something that probably I missed asking or engaging with. This is an opportunity where we can just have that like 2-minute, last comments on the conversation.
I've spoken enough.
Okay, that's okay. Anything from your side, Ariane?
Thank you.
Thanks to you. I must say thanks to you guys. I think it was a good conversation. Even though we were like a bit like we'll touch on certain issues, but still we could feel there is a thread to it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayanda.
I really appreciate it.